Hello, I'm Richard Rapoport, and this is number 0736, the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, and it comes to you right now.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
Now, it's time for an eclectic mix of interviews and some of the oddest news stories you'll ever hear. It's the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Hey there, hi there, ho there! Peter Anthony Holder here with you, and yes, this is indeed another edition of the Stuff File program, number 0736. And coming up on this edition of the Stuff File program, Marc Abrahams, editor of the Annals of Improbable Research, is back on the show. Each year they hand out the Ig Nobel Awards, and this year's version was the 33rd. Back when they started, it took a little more convincing to the scientific community that they were a legit award than it is today.
The early years, people weren't sure what we were doing, and there is a pretty long history of people attacking science. So we had to do a lot of persuading in the early years. But as time went on, and a lot of the winners started to get attention that was both pleasant and sometimes even useful to them, other people started to notice. In the last 10 years or so, we've noticed a dramatic change that not only are a lot of the people we offer a prize to familiar with it, but many of them have been hoping that someday they might get a prize.
Rebecca Whitlinger is one of those rare women who not only got to wear her bridesmaid dress more than once, she's worn it in many different circumstances and in many parts of the world. She first put the dress on just 6 months after the wedding, back in 1988.
I was reminded of it every time I opened my closet, and I thought, hey, what can I do to wear it again? And I just decided, well, I'll just wear it at a construction site that was near my apartment at the time. And I thought it would be funny, and I sent people pictures, and then it just sort of snowballed. I'm going back to France in November, and we might go to Spain. The dress wants to go to Spain for sure, as well as I do, and there's nothing I wouldn't do as long as it's family friendly.
Relationship coach Frank Kermit is back on the show to talk about long-distance relationships. What makes them work and what makes them not?
They will sometimes say the distance was too much, but it may not be the distance that was at the core. Now, sometimes it can be. There's two things here to look at. Number one, the person's expectations. What was that person's expectations, and were those expectations reasonable? That brings me to the next thing, and that is maturity. Is there a maturity level there? Because a lack of maturity equals unreasonable expectations.
And there's lots and lots of Stuff File news and, of course, an idiot of the day. The guest later, the person who told you this was show number 0736, was Richard Rapoport, who is a psychotherapist. He used to be a regular guest on my old radio show in a segment that we called Shrink Rap. Richard currently does yeoman work as he continues to work with military, vets, and RCMP for Health Canada, and doing research and speaking at conferences on moral injury. Thank you very much, Richard, for doing the guest slate on this edition of the Stuff File program, a show that is listener-supported, fan-funded radio that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Well, let's get right to the stuff. After the long-awaited capture of escaped fugitive Danilo Cavalcante on September the 13th, Pennsylvania State Police Lieutenant Colonel George Bivens held a press conference to share the details of the arrest. It was your standard fare post-capture police newser. That is, until one attendee, a podcaster named Michael Rainey, gets the prize for the most bizarre question posed to Bivens. I will play the question for you because just reading it doesn't do it justice. Before you hear it, though, it should be noted that the captured fugitive is a diminutive man. Here we go.
Sir, was there any concern that he would team up with another small man to step inside the trench coat, Little Rascal style?
No.
Yeah. Note the 1-second pause before Bivens gave his one-word answer. On X, Rainey said he knew no one else would ask the questions that needed to be asked. Really? Did it really need to be asked? Anyway, Rainey went on to say that they were very polite in asking me to leave. I guess that's a nice way to say that his feet were still on the floor as he left the building. Anyway, sure, if you work for the Walt Disney Company, you expect to have mice all around you on the daily.
We bet you know this place. You know, the happiest place on earth.
But at the company's headquarters in New York City, advertising staffers on the 5th floor were advised on September the 11th to clear out immediately because the building was infested with the happy little rodents. Oh, and also some fleas. In an email to personnel, management said, risk management and facilities teams are aware of the issues and are working to quickly resolve them. One source said the existing building is set to be demolished and that there's no incentive for upkeep. At any given time, most of the elevators are broken.
But that's impossible. This is my fault. It should be me who goes.
No, Mickey, we're talking about real mice. Anyway, this no longer sounds like a fairy tale job. A Krispy Kreme driver delivering donuts to an express convenience store on Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Alaska on September the 12th learned the hard way to lock up his van whenever he leaves it after a pair of donut thieves raided his ride and got their fill. And when you're talking about a mama bear and her cub, that's a lot, said Shelley Dino, who is the manager of the express store. They ate 20 packages of the donut holes and I believe 6 packages of the 3-pack chocolate donuts. Reports say that no humans or bears were injured during the donut raid, although I would scour the wilderness for 2 bears in a diabetic coma. Base security was able to convince the bears to leave by blasting loud sirens. Oh, I think they'll be back. I mean, we learned all we need to know about bears from Walt Disney's Winnie the Pooh, and you know those Krispy Kremes are honey-dipped.
I wish I had some honey.
If there was ever a place where it would be better to let a dropped Apple Watch go, a Michigan woman found it. On September 19th, passers-by called police when they heard a woman yelling for help from within an outhouse.
Oh, crap.
The unidentified woman had lowered herself into the outhouse toilet to retrieve her Apple Watch, which had fallen into the unmentionable muck below.
Oh, crap.
Unable to climb back out, the woman resorted to yelling for assistance, and she was eventually lifted out via strap by first responders.
Oh, crap.
State police issued a statement with a warning to any fumble fingers out there who might follow the woman's poor example. If you lose an item in an outhouse toilet, do not attempt to venture inside the containment area. Serious injury may occur. Seriously, why would someone dive headfirst into an outhouse to retrieve an Apple Watch?
Apple Watch series is a device so powerful, so personal, so liberating. It can change the way you live each day.
Well, you got that right. But apparently it can't get you out of an outhouse toilet.
Crap on a crutch!
Anyway, let's get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? The 33rd First Annual Ig Nobel Awards took place earlier this month. Each year, the Annals of Improbable Research puts on the event which honors achievements that first make people laugh and then think. So, who are the big winners in science for 2023? Marc Abrahams, the editor of the Annals of Improbable Research, is back with us once again from Boston via Skype to talk about it. Hi, Marc.
Hello, Peter. How are you?
Just tickety-boo. Thanks very much once again for being on the program. We seem to have you on just about every year. And every year I'm totally astonished by how much bigger this thing gets and how much more prestigious it gets and also how much more quirky it gets. And even the pandemic of a couple of years ago hasn't slowed you down.
The world is full of people who are working really, really, really hard at things that fascinate them. And happily for us, sometimes they tell us about it, and sometimes other people notice and tell us about it.
Going back to the beginning, 33 years ago, did you ever think that you'd, first of all, be doing this 33 years later, and it would be as big as it is?
I hoped so, but you never know when you start something how it's going to go, but you do have hopes. As far as how big it is, I have no idea how to measure this thing. Or no, that's not quite true. I do have one way. We do a kind of rough sampling of news reports from around the world. And over 33 years, that's grown steadily. There are news reports in, I think, every part of the world, and more of them every year. And average length also grows a little every year. It's very strange, kind of nice.
Well, what about the scientists? In the 33 years you've been doing this, have scientists taken this more seriously? Are they really, really stoked and honored to get it? And was it that way in year one, or did you have to kind of warm up, or they warm up to you?
Things have changed, and mostly for the better over 33 years. The early years, people weren't sure what we were doing, and there is a pretty long history of people attacking science. In fact, there's a long history of people attacking anything, but especially science. So we had to do a lot of persuading in the early years. But as time went on, and a lot of the winners started to get attention that was both pleasant and sometimes even useful to them, other people started to notice. And in the last 10 years or so, we've noticed a dramatic change that not only are a lot of the people we offer a prize to familiar with it, but many of them have been hoping that someday they might get a prize. That wasn't why they started out doing the thing. It's just after they did it, somebody pointed out to them, hey, this could win an Ig Nobel Prize. And we also have seen in recent years a lot of the institutions where people work, universities, companies. Sometimes right after the prizes are announced, the head of the university will make a video with the winner, or the university or the company will put out a press release talking about how nice it was for them. That's always been very pleasant for us.
Well, let's talk about the winners of 2023, and let's start off with Chemistry and Geology Prize. And this is an explanation as to why many scientists like to lick rocks. I didn't even know scientists liked to lick rocks. Now I'm questioning everything.
I'm pretty sure not all scientists do, but a lot of them do, and especially if their profession is to study rocks, and they're usually called geologists. A lot of geologists lick rocks, and it's for a really practical reason. If you're out wandering around in the field, as they say, and you pick up some rock that looks a little interesting, you want to know what it is. You look at it, and you might even pull out a little magnifying or a big magnifying glass and try to look at it in detail. It's hard to see the detail sometimes if the rock is dry. But if it's wet, sometimes the detail becomes much clearer. And the quickest and easiest and cheapest way to make something wet is, well, you lick it. So that's what happens quite often. A lot of geologists also, after they've been doing that kind of thing for a while, develop a really unusual skill, which is they can sometimes tell by the taste what kind of rock it is, what the substance is.
You know, I've had the pleasure of talking not once, but twice to a geologist, Harrison Schmitt, the last man to walk on the moon, and I never thought to ask him if he licked any of the moon rocks.
I suggest you call him tonight.
I might just do that. Now, the Communication Prize talks about studying the mental activities of people who are experts at speaking backward. Again, I didn't know this was a group of people.
Several groups of people in different parts of the world. These scientists looked mostly at a group of people who live on an island in the Canary Islands off Spain, where there's apparently a fairly long tradition. When you grow up there, you learn from the older kids and the adults how to speak backwards. If you have a thought, if you have this skill, you can make the sounds in backwards order. It's really difficult for anybody else to do or to make sense of if you're listening. But it's a skill these people come up with. There are also some people in Argentina who do similar things, and I've heard since we gave this prize out, just a few days ago, that there are people in other parts of the world who do that as well.
I noticed that there is one grouping, at least from Canada, the Medicine Prize, involving several countries, and it's for using cadavers to explore whether there is an equal number of hairs in each of a person's two nostrils. And again, I didn't know this was something we needed to study, but clearly it is.
Yeah, need is a funny question there. These are some doctors who are dermatologists. They study skin, and they had some patients who have a form of alopecia. That's the disease where a lot of the hair isn't there. And they discovered that some of these patients had hairs inside one nostril but not the other. And they started to wonder, what does this say? Is this a sign of some very bad medical condition, or is it the opposite? Does it mean nothing? When they started to dig into what's always called the medical literature, they found nothing, absolutely nothing that could tell them anything about this. And so they decided to start looking into it. And, what's the normal amount of hairs inside a nostril? I have no idea, or I didn't before this. They didn't either. And apparently almost nobody else did. Now, if you were going to try to count the hairs inside a bunch of people's nostrils, how would you go about it?
Interesting indeed. We could go on and on and on, and there are several prizes that you gave out. I just want to talk about one other prize, the Psychology Prize. And this one actually is near and dear to my heart. This was given out for experiments on a city street to see how many passers-by stop to look upward when they see strangers looking upward.
You've got me curious. Why is this so near and dear to your heart?
Because I've seen people do, and as a gag, some of my friends used to do it when we were kids, just to see other people do it, not realizing that maybe there's a psychological story behind it. But we used to do this as kids.
Yeah. Why did you stop?
We were no longer kids, and we weren't scientists.
But nothing's really stopping you. You could do it. This was done in 1968. It was three scientists in New York City. They did this near Times Square, where there are very tall buildings. And they said what they discovered was that it doesn't take a very big group of people looking upwards to have an effect on the passing crowd, that they sometimes would get about 40% of the people walking by would stop and also look upward. Something interesting about this also is the scientist who led this group, who is now deceased, is named Stanley Milgram. Does that name seem familiar at all, Stanley Milgram?
I can't say that it is. I'm sure you'll tell
me. He did
an
experiment in the early 1960s that became very famous, called the Milgram experiment now, where he got a bunch of people and he put them in a room with some electrical equipment and say, this equipment is hooked up to a stranger in another room. And if you turn this dial, you will be giving that stranger a shock.
I remember that.
And they would ask these volunteers to keep turning up the dial, keep delivering the shock to the person in the other room who they couldn't see, and a lot of people did it. So this is the same scientist who a few years later did this more pleasant experiment about looking upward. Again, to see how easily do people do something that somebody else told them to do, or that they see other people are doing.
Gee, it makes me now want to go out and find out more about what Stanley Milgram did over the course of his career. Again, we're out of time, but it begs to be mentioned the fact that...
Peter, things are looking up. Even though we're out of time, things are looking up.
It begs to mention the fact that for people who want to find out more about this, you actually have the entire ceremony. People can watch this online?
Oh, yeah. You can see all these winners talking about what they did, and also you can see some Nobel Prize winners handing the prizes to them and also talking with them about what they did.
And where can people find this online?
On our website, which is improbable.com.
Mark, it's always a pleasure and an honor to have you on the program to talk with us. And each year you surprise me and astound me more with what the scientists come up with and what you treasure as far as giving scientists awards. So I thank you very much for being on the program with us once again.
Thanks, Peter. I'm always grateful that you call.
Marc Abrahams, editor of the Annals of Improbable Research. They are the folks that put out the annual Ig Nobel Awards. You can find out more and also watch all of this year's ceremonies by going to their website at improbable.com. And you can go to my website at thestufffile.com to the page for this show, which is show number 0736, and you'll find the links. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
There's still more guests, more news, and an idiot of the day coming your way on the Stuff File program. Stay tuned. The Stuff File program is a listener-supported, fan-funded radio show that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Sign up and find out about our rewards program. Being a patron doesn't have to be a long-term commitment. There's absolutely no obligation. You could join today and end whenever you'd like, but the time we have your support would be so greatly appreciated. We'd also love to hear your thoughts about the show and even your ideas for rewards. Join us for the ride. Join us at patreon.com/thestufffile program. You're listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder. It's way more fun and a lot healthier than licking all the buttons on an elevator.
And still to come on the program, we will talk to a woman who has worn a bridesmaid dress for several occasions, several years, around the world. We'll also touch base with Frank Kermit, a relationship coach, about long-distance relationships. We have an idiot of the day coming your way and more Stuff File news right here, right now. 61-year-old Michael Gordon Dick of Beaverton, Oregon, was sentenced on September 11th to 90 months in prison following his guilty plea for felony public indecency. Michael Gordon Dick was arrested last year after someone reported him standing on a bench in a backyard, naked from the waist down and looking into neighbors' backyards. Mr. Dick was on probation for the same crime when the incident took place. You know, when he gets out of jail, he should change his name and move out of Beaverton, because that's a combination that's just too tempting. And a 10-year-old Florida boy and his 11-year-old sister, who were running away to California, drove 320 kilometers in their mother's car before they were stopped by sheriff's deputies on an interstate highway. The Alachua County Sheriff's Office says deputies spotted the sedan on Interstate 75 near Gainesville in North Florida just before 4 a.m. The children's mother had reported it stolen and her children missing 4 hours earlier in Northport, a city in southwest Florida. The deputies, thinking they were dealing with car thieves, drew their guns and ordered those inside the car to step out. Much to their surprise, deputies observed a 10-year-old male driver exit the vehicle along with his 11-year-old sister. The children told deputies the girl had been upset that their mother had taken away her electronic devices for misbehaving, so the boy was driving her to California. The children were interviewed by detectives who said there was no indication they had been mistreated by their mother or anyone else in their home. The mother declined to press charges and the children were released to her. The names of the mother and children were not released. Wow. 10 and 11. They are not even teenagers yet. Please pray for that mother as she is going to endure many, many, many more sleepless nights over the next couple of years. And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, a foul-mouthed flyer went on an expletive-filled rant as she left an American Airlines flight claiming she is Instagram famous. This influencer, and I won't bother to mention her name because, as she said, she's Instagram famous, so I don't feel the need to help this extremely rude person, shared news clips on her Instagram stories about the undated incident. She posted, I said what I said before clarifying to those curious that she was not booted from the plane. I didn't get kicked off, she wrote. I asked to leave instead of it turning violent. Thank you. In the clip, she is wearing a skin-tight gray bodysuit and appears to say to the entire cabin, and not to anyone specific, "Call me a B again." She then shouts, "Call me a B again. I did nothing wrong," as she walks down the aisle holding her bags. As she turns to exit, she then notices a woman filming the interaction. Let's just roll that tape.
Up in your bitch. Goodbye. You shouldn't film me. I'm Instagram famous. You bum. Shut up.
Wow. Do you eat with that mouth? Do you kiss your mother with that mouth? We should note that this woman is also on a reality show called Bad Girls Club, where the premise is a group of rebellious women are put in a house together in an experiment intended to moderate their behavior. Yeah. Since social media is social media, many people are weighing in. A few of her fans are picking her side, but the majority of comments seem to be against her. I'll just share two that tickled my fancy. One person said, "Imagine being IG famous and flying on Coach." And another one said, "What the hell is Instagram famous? Is that like being a millionaire in Monopoly?" You know, I haven't heard such swearing on a plane since Samuel L. Jackson.
Enough is enough! I have had it with these monkey-fighting snakes on this Monday to Friday plane! Everybody strap in! I'm about to open some freaking windows.
Hey, this is a family show, so I could only play the extremely bad edited for TV version, but you get the idea. Anyway, let's get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? When Rebecca Whitlinger first saw the Gola May bridesmaid dress for a close friend's 1988 wedding, she was certain that she would never wear it again. But instead, over the years, Rebecca has worn that dress just about everywhere, and she has the pictures to prove it. In fact, she has created a bridesmaid fundraiser for charity and has also donated a portion of her book to the cause. That book is Always a Bridesmaid, 89 Ways to Recycle That Bridesmaid Dress. Rebecca joins us via Zoom from Pittsburgh. Hi, Rebecca.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, and I want you to know I'm wearing the dress as we speak.
Wow. Okay, so I actually saw you in People magazine. Now, you were covered in People magazine not once, but twice. You had a story several years ago on People magazine, and in a recent issue of People magazine, you were also in there again. First of all, let's go back to 1988. Was this the first time you were a bridesmaid?
No, but it clearly turned out to be the one that was the most memorable. It was a very close friend who said, "Would you want to be in my wedding?" And we're very close to this day. And I said yes. I did not like the dress, but you don't serve as a bridesmaid just because you're getting an outfit you want. You do it for your friend. And it was gold lame and gold sequins, as you correctly stated. And the sequins really are gold and glowy. But it was perfect for 1988. It was an evening wedding. But I thought the likelihood of wearing it again would be never.
So when did the idea... So when did the idea of actually wearing it again first start? How long after the wedding did you actually put that dress on again?
Say about 6 months. I was reminded of it every time I opened my closet. And I thought, hey, what can I do to wear it again? And I just decided, well, I'll just wear it at a construction site that was near my apartment at the time. And I thought it would be funny, and I sent people pictures, and then it just sort of snowballed.
Okay, you've worn this dress from Milan to Paris. You've worn it skiing in the Alps. You hiked Machu Picchu. You toured caves. Is there anything you won't do in this dress?
I won't do anything illegal, immoral, or obscene. But that leaves me plenty of future photo opportunities. I'm going back to France in November, and we might go to Spain So the dress wants to go to Spain for sure, as well as I do. And there's nothing I wouldn't do as long as it's, family friendly, put it that way. And I'm ready for all adventures, all countries, all states. So
now
I do love Canada.
I'm glad you love Canada. I assume that when you first put it on, it was a lark. When did it become a mission?
Oh gosh, I would probably say 30 years ago, because it just, people said, "Oh, are you going to bring the dress to my event?" I'm like, well, yes, I'll put it on, take the picture, and take it off, because usually I'm more fashionably clad, I guess you could say. And people, it just got noticed, and I won a local contest, and people started inviting me to do things. And it just seemed like, wow, this is fun. And it's a hobby that only takes 1 minute. Put the dress on, take it off. I always have, obviously, an outfit underneath, and then I'm good to go.
Is there, or are there, I should say, any alterations done to the dress over the years, or is it exactly the way you wore it back in 1988?
It's exactly the same, and the bride chose very durable and expensive fabric that made it last. And I thank her for that, because the dresses were custom made, and certainly it speaks to their high quality. And I've subjected this dress to a lot, believe me. It's still glowing.
I mentioned several places you've been to. You are, as in the Pittsburgh area, you've worn it to a Steelers game, to the Pittsburgh Ballet Theater, to the Symphony Orchestra for performances. At what point, I think it was in 1999 that you published a book, as I mentioned earlier, Always a Bridesmaid, 89 Ways to Recycle That Bridesmaid Dress. When did you realize that it was such a thing that you needed to write a book?
I think after being on Oprah, that really sealed the deal. That gave me a lot of credibility. And then that's when People magazine came out, and I did the Today Show, because I think it's something people can relate to. Women have these dresses. I mean, I've been a bridesmaid 8 times. You look at them languishing in the closet, you think, what can I do? And even men that might not be fashion conscious are aware that these gowns are hanging in their wife or girlfriend's closet. And I think it's just something relatable that I happened to stumble upon.
Now, you are still friends, as you say, with that woman who you were a bridesmaid for.
Yes.
I assume you were not the only bridesmaid. So, are the other bridesmaids wearing the dress, or is it just you?
They are. It's just, well, it was my best friend too, who was, of course, a member of the wedding, and then she got married way before I did, and was busy having children. And she gave me her dress, and it was cut up and redesigned by the designer Nicole Miller for when we appeared on Inside Edition. So that dress was all remade into a skirt and a vest, and it's pretty cool. But I can't say I wear that, but I look at it fondly.
And did the marriage last? In other words, you've been wearing this dress all these years. Is your girlfriend still married?
The bride is happily married and has a major career, but I just leave her out of it, because she didn't invent the concept of wearing matching dresses to a wedding. And certainly things have changed since that time, because now brides are saying, oh, choose a color, and that will, you can go from there, because there is not one style that can accommodate, we'll say a woman that's 4'11" and a woman that's 5'10", and somebody that's well endowed and someone who isn't. So I think bridesmaids' dresses have gotten better, but people still have a lot of them. I mean, I'll tell you, I took one of my dresses, not from that wedding, but from another one. I reupholstered my piano bench, but I haven't really used them so much like I have done the gold dress, because the gold dress is compelling. I don't know. It must be the sequins or something.
What has your friend said about the longevity and the success of the dress that was initially worn for her wedding?
Well, I don't think she ever thought that it would make national media, and certainly I didn't either. But when we get together, we don't talk about that. I mean, that was so long ago. We're always catching up on more timely things. But she just laughed. She doesn't. Nobody would envision that this is what it is. And but that's what happened. It's quirky but harmless, and that's what I like about it.
I've seen a lot of the pictures where you've traveled literally around the world and wearing the dress. To be honest, one of my favorite pictures is the one you took in 2012 in London with a guardsman.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I got his permission first. He looked very serious, but he seemed to be willing to stand motionless next to me, which, made him a good foil. And that was great. I mean, I had fun in London in the dress. And then I stepped a few, like maybe a foot away, peeled the dress off. He was probably relieved to know that I was fully clothed underneath it. And then I walked on and probably had a good lunch.
What is your favorite escapade or picture with the dress?
I think I would have to say Morocco riding a camel, because I was scared. Those camels are mean, and I don't think they appreciated the gold sequins either. There's a reason why there's like a rope or like a little tie around their mouth. But it was cool to be in the Sahara Desert and riding the camel. I thought it was going to throw me, but I want to be buried in the dress, so if something happened, I guess I'd be ready to go, literally.
We would be remiss if we didn't mention the fact that not only have you had enjoyment with this dress, not only have you written a book which you gave some of the proceeds to a charity, but you continue to raise money with this dress. Tell us about that.
Well, I haven't done it recently because, as I said, the styles have changed, but I work at Cancer Bridges in Pittsburgh, and we have all free support services for those affected by cancer. And if I can think of another way to create an event with some buzz, I'm definitely going to do it. We did $100,000 on 4 years of events, but that was a while ago. I'm ready to relaunch it because I love my charity and I believe in it. It's just, we're so busy now, but I'll entertain all offers, that's for sure.
Which came first, chicken or egg kind of situation? Were you someone who was a world traveler, or did you become a world traveler because of the dress?
I always wanted to travel, but that's a good question. I think I wouldn't say I travel because of the dress. I travel because one of my best friends is a travel agent and another is a travel writer. But they understand that if I'm going somewhere, the dress is accompanying me. But people around, Pittsburgh also know that if there's a photo opportunity, I'm coming with the dress. No one even asks anymore. They just expect it.
At the height of your popularity with the dress, when you were having the book and you were doing television, if you were out in the dress, did you get recognized?
Yes. And I think it's because of, Oprah was a lot, and, people would say, "Oh, I saw you somewhere. Is this the dress?" I'm like, "Well, yes, it is my dress," and happy to, be recognized. Honestly, I got a lot of proposals and letters to go out, and I had a boyfriend at the time, which I usually never say, but I would, get, "You're always a bridesmaid. I could marry you." And that's very, very nice. But I tend to think if somebody wants to marry me and they haven't met me, that's probably not going to be in my future. But
did you ever get married?
I did. I finally got married, so I'm not always a bridesmaid, but my husband passed away after a year from cancer, actually. So I am still, I'm widowed and single, I guess you could say.
Sorry for your loss.
Oh, thank you.
But you have I guess a great sense of humor, a great sense of style, and also a great sense of literally doing the right thing. And you've combined all of those things to have some fun with the dress and raise some money for a very, very good organization. So kudos to you on all that you've done since 1988.
Well, I'll tell you what's next in the works. People ask me how I can still fit in the dress after 35 years, and I definitely have fitness and diet tips, and I'm planning on sharing them. Nothing's earth-shattering. I just wanted to say what works for me because people do ask about that, and I have a few answers. That is for sure.
Excellent. Rebecca, it's been an honor and a pleasure to have a chance to talk with you. Continued success in all that you do.
Hey, great success to you too. Thank you very much for your time, and I think you're awesome and great questions too. So thank you.
Rebecca Whitlinger, who since 1988 has gotten plenty of use out of her gold lame bridesmaid dress. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
Got something for the mailbag? Drop Peter a line. He'd love to hear from you. Send your email to mailbag@thestufffile.com. And remember, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's mailbag@thestufffile.com. Or catch up with him on Twitter or Facebook. There's more Stuff File coming your way in just a few moments.
Michael Liebling is the author of The Serial Killer's Son Takes a Wife. It's a page-turning thriller. You say you've read other serial killer novels? Oh, as Michael will tell you, not like this one.
It's not like any serial killer novel you've read before. It really goes behind the scenes. So when I say he takes a wife, you've got to imagine what it's like to be the offspring of somebody who's murdered multiple people. So how do you live with yourself after that? And you were just a kid when it all happened. If you fall in love, how do you tell the woman you love your dad was a serial killer? And how would she react? So the title, it's not entirely clear, but as you get into it, it will become very clear.
The Serial Killer's Son Takes a Wife. It's a recipe for mystery with a scoop of humor and a sprinkle of horror. The Serial Killer's Son Takes a Wife. Available now at Amazon and wherever you buy books.
You're listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder. In the interest of time, kindly hold your applause until the entire program is over.
And still to come on the program, we will have an Idiot of the Day later on coming up on the show. Plus, we will talk about long-distance relationships. As a matter of fact, we will talk about long-distance relationships now because we've run out of time to do any more Stuff File news. It's been a busy show. So let's get to our last guest right here, right now, shall we? Yes. As the old saying goes, absence makes the heart grow fonder. But is that really true? Relationship coach Frank Kermit is back on the show, this time to talk about long-distance relationships. He joins us via Skype from right here in Montreal. Hi, Frank.
Hello, Peter, sir. How are you?
Just tickety-boo. Thanks very much for being on the program with us. Now, I got to tell you right off the bat, this is not necessarily a topic that I understand or completely sympathize with. And that's because of my own family experience. I come from a long line of people who have spent lots of time in long-term relationships that were long-distance relationships. I mean, I'm one of 5 children. I am 13 years behind the pack. And the reason why I am that far behind the pack is that my parents were separated by countries for 11 years in their marriage. So when I hear people saying, oh, I can't handle a long-distance relationship, I tend to fall on the side of my parents where they used to just go, been there, done that, what's the problem? Now, when I hear people talk about long-distance relationships, I put them into 2 groups. Long-distance relationships where the people are not necessarily committed to each other. They're, boyfriend, girlfriend. One goes off to school, say, for college at another place, and it puts a strain on the relationships. But I also, in my other category, I put people who are committed to each other, people who are married with children, who are in long-distance relationships. And I see those 2 things differently. Do you agree or disagree?
I would agree very much so. And as a genealogist, that's a big passion of mine, researching family trees. What you described in terms of your parents having to be apart while they traveled and moved their whole family to another country. Usually, most people didn't move their whole family at once. It would be somebody going on ahead, finding work, saving up money, sending it back, and then the rest of the family would come either in parts or all together once there was enough money, and that could take years. So there is a very big difference being married and being long distance, and people who were casually dating and then having distance thrust upon them. There is another category that people come up to me with, which I then have to point out to them it may not be what they think, and that is they've never met in person. They've met online, they've met through letters, they've met through various forms of media, and they declare themselves being in a relationship without ever having really met in person. So when they come to me and say, yes, I've been in a relationship for months, and it turns out they've never met in person, I tend to be the rain on their parade in reminding them, well, if you haven't been in each other's space, your feelings are legit. Okay? I'm not going to say that your feelings are not legit. Which you feel what it is you feel for the other person. But does that qualify it as a relationship? It may be qualified as a relationship in the way an individual will define it for themselves, but I have to take a very stern position in the profession that I'm in because I don't want to see anybody get bamboozled by a fake relationship and then end up sending money and other resources to someone they've never met.
Gotcha.
So although I'm very much wary of it, there are people who will classify that as a long distance relationship as well.
Okay, so again, let's talk about long distance relationships that work. And the reason why I bring that up is today we have more modern technology to perhaps allow that to happen. Again, I don't want to sound like the old fogey who went to school in the snow uphill both ways and walking 5 miles. But when I describe my parents, they didn't have Snapchat. They didn't have WhatsApp. They couldn't see each other and talk to each other. My mother didn't even have a phone. For 11 years, it was nothing but letters. That's it. So it's a little easier now. Or is it?
Yes. Well, okay. Let's also bring something up here, and that is, in that time, generations previous, there wasn't a lot of free time.
Yeah.
People were preoccupied with basic survival. And when you're preoccupied with survival, there is no free time to make use of where people are going to go out and do things that could be a threat to that relationship. They're too busy just trying to survive, making enough money to raise a family, especially if you're dealing with people who are separated and alone. It was very different back then. I will also go a step further and say the expectations were different back then. And by that I mean, let's say what separated a couple was war. Someone is going off to war. Usually the males are going off to war and the women are staying behind with their families. There was a certain understanding of managed expectations. Something that we'll talk about in the genealogy circles, something that we're going to talk about in wartime stories, is that when a man went off to war and he came back and found that his wife was pregnant, and if you look at the timeline, not his.
Right.
It was just accepted that, look, this is just one of those things that's going to happen. And they didn't talk about it. They just accepted the situation as is. Divorce really wasn't a thing. The same way that while the man is at war, wondering if he's going to live to see the next morning. The soldiers sometimes went off with whoever they could find as their last hurrah. I don't want to get into like too many details for our
Oh,
listeners who can be very.
I can pretty much picture the details because, again, I have members of my family who have been in both things you just described.
Okay.
So there you go.
So,
I know what you're talking about.
so the expectation was different. With today's expectations, you can stay in contact daily, seeing the person, hearing about their day, hearing their voice. And on one hand, it makes it really easy because you see the person every day. But on the other hand, it sometimes makes it more challenging because you know what it is you're missing. Out of sight, out of mind.
Does it take a particular type of personality to succeed in this situation? And the reason why I bring that up, and I'm not one of those people who poo-poos all Hollywood relationships because, you know, people always say Hollywood relationships, they're not built to last. But having said that, I'm always the optimist in situations like that. But when I hear about somebody who is getting divorced merely because either the husband or the wife is away too much working on location, I don't understand that. I don't understand that reasoning. To me, there's got to be an underlying problem that this is on top of, but they're pointing to this distance as being the problem. Am I wrong in that statement?
Well, you're actually quite accurate. They will sometimes say the distance was too much, but it may not be the distance that was at the core. Now, sometimes it can be. There's two things here to look at. Number one, the person's expectations. What was that person's expectations, and were those expectations reasonable? I remember one woman I was working with in my coaching practice where she cited that the reason that she and her husband were getting a divorce was because he worked a job where he was away from home a lot, hours upon hours into his profession. And I asked her, I said, was this something that just came up or was he always into this? And she made it clear that she pursued a man who was what we would call a man of industry. Well, you wanted a man who was very financially successful. But in order to be financially successful, they're going to make choices. They're going to make sacrifices. And one of those sacrifices is time, because they have to put a lot of time in what they do. That's what you went after. Was it reasonable to expect that you wanted somebody who could provide you with a certain lifestyle, but also expect that they would be home for dinner every night? And that brings me to the next thing, and that is maturity. Is there a maturity level there? Because a lack of maturity equals unreasonable expectations.
Okay, well, that being said, because we just have about a minute and a half or so to wrap this up, let's use an example that I said earlier. Somebody who's going off to college, be it the male or the woman, makes no difference, or same-sex relationships, makes no difference. Somebody's going off to college, someone is not. What are the tips that you would suggest to make sure that that long-distance relationship can last?
There it is. Be mindful that the person who is leaving today, when they come back, is going to be different. If they're going off to school, long-distance education, education is a period of growth. People change by being exposed to new ideas, new people, new ways of thinking. That by the time they finish their schooling and find whether it's a new career or just a new direction, they may not be the same people they were when the two of you had to separate. And you have to be mindful that people are going to grow and change in a lot of different directions. In fact, let's take that same situation and say, hey, nobody actually went away for school, but they stayed in the same city. But somebody's going to school and somebody is pursuing their path without school. There's going to be a growth. There's going to be a change. Relationships are difficult. It's hard work. And you have to have a certain type of expectation and say, look, yes, we are both open to growing. I want my partner to grow. But sometimes you have to make an effort to grow into the same direction. And that's not always possible. Now, if you can grow in the same direction, that's great. But it's not always possible. And you have to be mindful of that.
Always great advice, Frank. I thank you once again for being on the program with us. It's a special treat to have you on with us once again to talk about relationships, and this time around, long-distance relationships. Thank you very much.
All the best, sir. I'll see you in the future.
Relationship coach Frank Kermit. You can check out his website at franktalks.com. And you can go to my website at thestuffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0736, and you'll find the link to his site. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder. It's that time that you've been waiting for, boys and girls. It's time now for the Idiot of the Day.
And now it's time for the strange things adults do. The Stuff File presents the Idiot of the Day.
This week's is a time-released event. Back in July, a Miami man fired his rifle into the air again and again to celebrate Governor Ron DeSantis' signing of Florida's permitless carry law. Police, who responded to the shooting, then shot him several times, putting the man into the hospital where he was arrested just last week. 37-year-old Christian Labout is now behind bars at the Metro West Detention Center after his Friday arrest at Jackson Memorial Hospital. He was charged with 48 counts of discharging a weapon in public and a slew of other charges, including resisting an officer with violence. According to an arrest report, Miami police responded on July 7th to an apartment complex where they found a man in body armor wielding a gun and firing into the air. Witnesses told officers that Labout announced he was celebrating the new law while spraying a hail of bullets. The permitless carry law, which took effect on July 1st, allows people to carry concealed guns in public without training and removes additional background checks. It was signed into law by DeSantis in April. You're probably asking yourself, with a permitless carry law, what could possibly go wrong? The answer is this. Police say an officer asked Labout to stop shooting his rifle and show his hands. The officer kept giving commands, but Labout ran off into the apartment's hallways. The officer then shot Labout several times. Now, why, oh why, would you feel the need to shoot into the sky in a populated area because of a gun law, then when the police arrive, run inside an apartment building while still holding the rifle and wearing body armor? One reason, and one reason only. You're an idiot!
Gee, I'm only a kid, but even I know you're an idiot.
And that's it for this edition of the Stuff File program, number 0736. Hope you enjoyed it. The website is thestuffile.com, and once again, Stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H, where you'll find information and links on all of our guests by going to the weekly Stuff File page. Just look for the corresponding program number, and once again, that's 0736. Email me at peter@thestuffile.com. You can also find me on Facebook, X, Spoutable, Post, and Blue Sky as PA Holder. And check us out on Patreon, where you can become a patron of the program. Hope to see you back here for our next show on the air, online, or as a download. We're coming to you from everywhere, including KDXRadio.com, TrueTalkRadio.com, over the air on World FM in New Zealand, WLSLLP FM in Dade City, Florida, KZZHLP FM in Eureka, California, CKUW FM in Winnipeg, CFMU in Hamilton, CKLU in Sudbury, Local 107.3 FM in St. John, CHSR in Fredericton, and also streaming on just about any streaming service your little heart desires. That's it. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, a presentation of Flying Fish Communications. Always remember that an apple a day keeps the doctor away. And with a bushel of apples, you could have a hell of a time with the doctor's spouse.